What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel for another review. I've had to sling a couple of these out back to back this weekend, or I guess it might be Monday or Tuesday by the time you see this. But today we are talking about In the Lost Lands, directed by Paul Anderson. No, not that Paul Anderson. We're talking about Paul W.S. Anderson, the guy who made the 8 or 9, however many there are, Resident Evil films, plenty of video game adaptations like Monster Hunter and Mortal Kombat. And this film must be, like his 100th collaboration with his wife Milla Jovovich. And to make things more confusing, her character in this film is named Alice, the same name that her character has in the Resident Evil series. So I guess I'd describe this as an action fantasy. Like, imagine the politics of Game of Thrones, the landscapes of Mad Max, and the shitty one-note characters of that god-awful Borderlands movie. Squish all those things together, and that's kind of what this is. It's fitting that I brought up Game of Thrones because this is actually based on a short story written by George R.R. Martin. I have no idea how faithfully this follows the short story. I have to imagine there's a lot added in, and some of it is just pure nonsense. Well, actually, a lot of it is nonsense. It's set in a post-apocalyptic future in which there is one semi-civilized city and everything else is referred to as the Lost Lands. I have to say the landscapes also reminded me quite a bit of Resident Evil. The story follows a witch named Grey Alice, played by Milla Jovovich, who must traverse these lost lands to locate a shapeshifter so she can steal his power and deliver it to her queen. And she's joined by Dave Bautista as a hunter named Boyce. Honestly, that's probably all you really need to know to decide whether or not you're going to see this, because it is pretty much a copy and paste of every other movie that Paul W.S. Anderson has ever made. The Resident Evil films that he directed, they felt like action knockoffs of far better films. Granted, most of them were watchable, but this feels like a knockoff of a knockoff. It feels like a knockoff of his Resident Evil films. It's one of those movies that fundamentally makes zero sense. So Alice is unable to refuse anyone's wish, which is why when this queen approaches her with some form of payment and requests that she brings her this supernatural ability, she basically doesn't have a choice. And it's never explained to us why she can't refuse people's wishes. It's kind of a pretty significant plot hole because it's Alice's sole motivation for going on this mission. And this is another problem I have with Milla Jovovich and most of her performances. It's not that she's bad, it's that she's playing the same character every time, but I can't really blame her for that. That's, once again, the writers of the film who are to blame because they make her such a stoic stereotype, or not a stereotype, but she's just bland. She has no weaknesses, no nuance, no vulnerability. She's just kind of there. I like Dave Bautista. He's not given much to work with here either, although he does have a two-headed snake that he uses to kill people. That was kind of cool. Again, something that they could have used to build a backstory for these characters. How the hell did he get the two-headed snake? We never learn. Besides them traveling to the destination in the Lost Lands where they will find this shapeshifter, there's not much else going on in the plot. There is a fanatical church that essentially functions as the city's military, and it was kind of interesting to see their relentless pursuit of these characters. But nothing else grabbed me. Just a bunch of boring-ass characters with no backstories, no flaws, no development. They're just planks of wood shoved into these horribly digitized looking backgrounds. Anderson does this a lot, but it was very apparent in this case that they used some awful green screen effects. Just the color grading is so ugly looking and there's zero attempt to render a realistic depth of field. Everything behind the characters is murky and hazy, and it's just not believable in the slightest. It's light on action, heavy on exposition, and the worst I can say about it is what little goodwill it did have, the things that I was entertained by, are thrown out the door in the third act, which is so all over the place with all of these twists and turns that I guess are supposed to feel clever, but most of them were heavily telegraphed beforehand, so I wasn't surprised by them. And I certainly wasn't compelled either, because you can pick them apart with ease. There are so many holes that I don't even want to get into it. The best I can say about it, besides the fact that it had a couple of competently shot action scenes, is I'm sure the concept arts were pretty cool looking. There are a lot of George Miller-esque designs in terms of the buildings and the combat vehicles. You know, I'm always going to be open to exploring the world building of a post-apocalyptic environment, but this felt so tacked together, like nobody really cared, whether it's the actors, the writers, the cinematographer. There wasn't much effort into this, so I just get the feeling that it was kind of a cash grab for everybody. I'm going to give In the Lost Lands 1.5 stars. It may not be the literal worst film of the year, but I'm sure it's going to be pretty close as I make my list towards the end of the year. So yeah, don't see this unless you just love Paul W.S. Anderson movies. And I can't imagine he has that many devoted fans out there. Those are my thoughts on the film. Be sure to drop down into the comments and let me know what you think of it. Hit that like button as well as subscribe while you're at it. If you want to see more videos like this, I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.